She boarded the flight with confidence. But when a gate agent and flight attendant tried to humiliate her for sitting in first class, what happened next left the entire airline scrambling, a crew member grounded, and the internet on fire. This wasn't just a seat. It was a statement. You won't believe how this black CEO turned humiliation into a movement that shook the entire airline industry. Watch till the end to see how one powerful woman made them regret ever doubting her. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more real stories that inspire, empower, and hold the system accountable. The clack of her heels echoed sharply against the polished airport tiles as Jordan Hayes approached Gate 17. She wasn't just walking, she was gliding, chin high, confidence stitched into every step of her custom navy suit. The gate agent paused, her smile tightening as she caught sight of Jordan, the only black woman in a line of sharply dressed executives boarding first class. Jordan extended her boarding pass without hesitation. The agent's eyes flicked from the screen to Jordan's face, then back again. A beat too long. A breath too cold. "Ma'am," the agent said, voice dripping with doubt, "are you sure you're in the right line?" Jordan didn't flinch. "Quite sure," she replied coolly. "Would you like to scan the pass and find out together?" The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through the polite facade of airport protocol. A couple nearby passengers glanced up from their phones. One man chuckled softly, as if entertained by the possibility of drama. Another woman smirked and whispered something to her partner. The scanner beeped. Green. "Oh," the agent muttered, quickly stepping aside. "You may board." Jordan raised an eyebrow but said nothing more. She didn't need to. The damage was done, and it hadn't come from her. With grace, she walked down the jet bridge, but the weight of 1,000 unsaid assumptions followed close behind. Inside the plane, the flight attendant greeted her with the same brand of skepticism. Jordan offered a polite nod. No smile came in return. As she reached her seat, 2A, she felt it again, the unspoken judgment, the suggestion that she didn't belong, couldn't possibly afford it, must be confused. But what they didn't know was this. Jordan wasn't just another first-class passenger. She was a self-made tech CEO, listed on Forbes, with partnerships that spanned continents. Her presence here wasn't a fluke, it was earned. And yet, despite her accolades, she was still met with side eyes and second guesses. Still treated like an intruder in a space her hard work had rightfully claimed. Jordan sat down, crossed her legs, and pulled out her tablet. They'd tried to shrink her with a glance. But they had no idea the storm they were about to face. As Jordan stepped into the first-class cabin, the cool blast of air conditioning wasn't the only chill she felt. The flight attendant, a tall woman with a perfectly pressed uniform and an even tighter expression, locked eyes with her. Her smile was brief, mechanical, and didn't quite reach her eyes. Jordan was used to reading the room. And this room? It was laced with silent doubt. The attendant glanced at Jordan's ticket, then gave her a slow, deliberate once-over, from the curls of her silk-pressed hair to the luxury laptop bag slung over her shoulder. "First class is just to your left," the attendant said with a tone that suggested surprise, or worse, suspicion. "I know," Jordan replied with quiet confidence, brushing past. But before she could reach her seat, the attendant called after her. "Excuse me, ma'am, can I see your boarding pass again?" Jordan stopped mid-aisle, turned calmly, and handed it over without a word. The attendant scrutinized it like it had been forged. She said, lips pursed. "You're in 2A?" "That's right." Still, the woman hesitated before handing the ticket back. "You know," she muttered, not quite under her breath, "we've had a few passengers try to sneak into first class recently." Jordan raised an eyebrow. "Is that so? And are they usually well-dressed professionals with a confirmed pass?" The attendant's face flushed, but she turned away, brushing it off like lint from her shoulder. Passengers seated nearby looked up, some awkward, some entertained, some pretending not to hear at all. Jordan exhaled slowly, reminding herself of the power in her poise. She took her seat, placed her bag under the seat in front of her, and quietly buckled in. But as the murmurs around her began to die down, Jordan's mind sharpened. This wasn't about a seat anymore. It wasn't about a boarding pass. It was about the layers of disrespect that black professionals, especially women, are forced to navigate, even in spaces they've rightfully earned. And what made it worse? The flight attendant's final words before takeoff. "These people always make a fuss." Jordan didn't respond. She didn't need to. She knew the best clapbacks weren't always loud. Sometimes they came with turbulence that shook more than just the sky. The engines hummed quietly as passengers settled into their seats, adjusting headrests and flipping through in-flight menus. Jordan sat still, her posture composed, but inside, the sting of that last remark from the flight attendant echoed like a drumbeat. She glanced around. Several passengers had overheard. Some had whispered. A few had looked away. But no one had spoken up. Until the flight attendant returned. This time, she wasn't alone. Trailing her was a stern-faced supervisor wearing a navy vest and an apologetic smile that didn't quite mask the tension. "Ma'am," the supervisor said, "we just need to verify your boarding pass again." Jordan blinked. Again. Her voice was calm but laced with steel. "Yes, just a routine check." "No, it's not," Jordan interrupted, loud enough to carry across the cabin. "You've already verified it once. Why am I the only passenger being questioned?" A hush fell over first class. Heads turned. One businessman took out his phone, subtly switching to camera mode. A woman in 1C leaned forward, eyebrows raised. Jordan stood up slowly, gracefully, her presence commanding. "Let me be clear," she said, projecting just loud enough for everyone around to hear. "This is not a misunderstanding. This is profiling. And I won't let it slide just because you're trying to dress it up as routine." The supervisor stammered. "Ma'am, please." "No, you please," Jordan said. "Please explain to the rest of this cabin why a professionally dressed black woman with a valid first-class ticket is being harassed in public. Explain it loud enough so your corporate office can hear it too." You could hear a pin drop. A few scattered claps broke out quietly. Someone murmured, "She's right." The supervisor's face paled. He quickly waved the attendant away and leaned in. "We apologize. We'll handle it." Jordan didn't sit just yet. She gave the cabin one final look. "I will be filing a complaint," she said. "And I suggest you document this now, before it becomes a headline later." Then she sat down, calm as ever, and pulled out her phone. Not to post. Not yet. She had someone powerful to text. And what she typed next would do more damage than any argument ever could. Jordan reclined slightly in her seat, exhaling a slow, measured breath as the supervisor and the flight attendant scurried back toward the galley. The murmurs in the cabin still lingered, like the smoke after a fire, not loud, but undeniable. She could feel eyes watching her, judging, admiring, waiting. But Jordan wasn't here to perform. She was here to disrupt. She unlocked her phone and opened her contacts. Not Instagram, not Twitter. No hashtags yet. Instead, she tapped on a name labeled Chairman B. Direct. Most people wouldn't believe it, but Jordan Hayes wasn't just a successful entrepreneur. She was one of the youngest black women to sit on the advisory board for the airline's parent company. She'd consulted with their executive team during their last restructuring. She knew exactly who signed off on budgets, and more importantly, who made decisions when PR disasters started brewing at 35,000 feet. Her message was short, sharp. "I just boarded Flight 408. First class. Gate agent and crew profiled me, challenged my seat twice, and humiliated me in front of passengers. Consider this your early warning. You'll either address this before we land, or you'll be reading about it with the rest of the country. JH." She hit send. Within 2 minutes, the read receipt appeared. Within 4, her phone buzzed with a reply. "Understood. We're on it. Stay where you are." Jordan smiled faintly. She didn't yell. She didn't cause a scene. She played the power most people didn't know she had, and now the storm she was about to unleash had names, emails, and corporate titles attached. Moments later, the captain emerged from the cockpit. Passengers straightened in their seats. Something was up. He walked down the aisle and stopped right at Jordan's seat. His voice was lower than a whisper, but his face was flushed. "Ms. Hayes, I want to personally apologize for the experience you've had so far. Corporate just contacted us directly. We've been instructed to handle this immediately and appropriately." Jordan looked him in the eye. "I'm listening," she said. Behind him, the same flight attendant, now visibly nervous, peeked from the galley. She didn't know it yet, but her day was about to take a very different turn. Because Jordan hadn't just spoken up. She had called the top. The cabin lights dimmed as final preparations for takeoff began, but something felt off. The intercom crackled, and the captain's voice filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a brief hold before departure. We appreciate your patience as we address a customer service issue." A wave of confusion rippled through the passengers. Brows furrowed. Necks craned. Some whispered, "Is it mechanical?" Others glanced toward the back of the plane. But Jordan knew exactly what was happening. She remained in her seat, calm and poised, her phone face down in her lap. She wasn't moving, not yet. The ball wasn't just in their court. She owned the whole damn court now. From the galley, the flight attendant emerged, this time without the smugness that had tainted her voice earlier. Her eyes darted quickly to Jordan, then away, like a child avoiding a parent's glare after being caught red-handed. Moments later, the same supervisor from earlier returned, only now his posture had changed. Gone was the stiff formality. He looked humbled, even shaken. "Ms. Hayes," he began, voice quiet but urgent. "Corporate has instructed us to offer you a formal apology. We also want to assure you that the staff involved will be removed from this flight immediately." Jordan looked up, her voice steady. "So you're grounding the flight crew for mistreating a paying customer?" He swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am. Specifically, the crew member responsible for the second verification." Before Jordan could speak again, a soft gasp came from across the aisle. The passengers were watching. Recording. This wasn't just an apology, it was a reckoning. Within minutes, the flight attendant, the one who had doubted, dismissed, and muttered about "these people," was escorted off the plane. No announcement. No eye contact. Just the weight of her actions catching up to her, mid-flight, mid-career. A stunned silence filled the cabin. Then came the whispering. The realization. The power shift. Jordan didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She just sat back in her seat, adjusted her neck pillow, and opened her tablet. The flight may have been delayed, but the message was crystal clear. This wasn't just about one woman in one seat. It was about every unspoken moment of injustice. And this time, the airline blinked first. Before the wheels even left the tarmac, the story had already taken off. A college student seated 2 rows behind Jordan had captured the entire scene, right from the second she was asked for her boarding pass a second time, to the moment the flight attendant was escorted off the plane in stunned silence. She uploaded a 90-second clip to TikTok with the caption, "They tried to kick this black woman out of first class. Turns out she's not the one to mess with. Hashtag she belongs in first class airplane fire." In under 15 minutes, the video exploded. 500,000 views. 70,000 likes. Thousands of comments. People were angry. People were inspired. People were invested. Tweets started flying in. The way she handled that with pure grace and power. Iconic. Airlines need to stop mistaking black excellence for fraud. She earned that seat. And then some. Plot twist. She sits on the airline's advisory board. Let that sink in. Within 30 minutes, hashtag she belongs in first class was trending globally. News pages reposted the clip. Blue-check influencers chimed in. A well-known journalist from a major news network even tweeted, "Can someone connect me to this woman? We need her on air. Prime time." But Jordan. She was sipping orange juice and flipping through her tablet, reading a digital briefing on her next venture. She hadn't posted a word. Not yet. But she knew what was happening, and she had planned for it. The power wasn't just in the drama, it was in the truth. Meanwhile, the airline's social media team was in full panic mode. Interns and PR heads were huddled around monitors, watching the video spread like wildfire. They scrambled to prepare a statement before things spiraled further. But it was already too late. The public had seen it, felt it, backed her. Up in the sky, Jordan finally opened her own X, formerly Twitter, account and posted her first message of the day. Earned my seat. Twice. Had to remind a few people. Respect isn't optional, it's overdue. JH. Hashtag she belongs in first class. It was bold, poised, and calm, just like her. And with that single tweet, she didn't just ride the wave. She owned it. By the time Jordan's flight touched down in Chicago, the internet had already crowned her the face of calm resistance. News outlets had picked up the video. Influencers were calling her Queen Jordan. Major airlines were tagged in the frenzy, but only one name was being dragged through the mud, the airline she was sitting on. Waiting at the gate was a representative from corporate, stiff with nerves and sweating through his tailored blazer. "Ms. Hayes," he said, as she stepped off the plane. "The CEO would like to speak with you. Immediately." Jordan didn't blink. "Good. I have some thoughts for him, too." An hour later, in a private conference room at the airline's executive terminal, Jordan sat across from Robert Delaney, the airline's embattled CEO. His tie was loosened, his smile forced. "We owe you a deep and sincere apology," he began, tone dripping with corporate remorse. "This was unacceptable. We've already suspended the crew member and we're drafting a public apology." Jordan raised a hand. "Let me stop you right there. This isn't about one employee. This is about a culture." Delaney's face twitched. "I don't need a photo op. I don't need a seat upgrade. And I don't need hush money," she said, her voice calm and cutting. "What I do want is change." She laid a folder on the table, prepared before she ever stepped foot on that flight. Inside were documents proposing real reforms. Mandatory anti-bias and diversity training for all frontline staff. A review board led by third-party civil rights experts. Data transparency on passenger discrimination complaints. Promotion audits to evaluate who rises within the airline's ranks. Delaney stared at the proposals, stunned. "And if you're worried about the cost," Jordan added, standing, "I suggest you calculate the price of a viral scandal." He nodded slowly. He had no choice. The board had already begun to weigh in. Investors were on edge. And now, the woman they had tried to dismiss was holding the pen that could rewrite the narrative. As she walked out of the room, reporters crowded the lobby. Cameras flashed. But Jordan didn't speak. Not yet. Because she hadn't just won an apology. She was negotiating a legacy. And the next chapter would be written on her terms. The headlines rolled in like thunder after a long drought. Black CEO confronts airline discrimination, forces policy overhaul. From passenger to powerhouse, Jordan Hayes redefines first class. The viral moment that made an airline bend the knee. But for Jordan Hayes, it wasn't about fame. It was about the fight and the future. Within 72 hours, the airline released a statement acknowledging a failure in protocol and professionalism, citing a need for deeper industry-wide accountability. But they didn't stop there. Under pressure from shareholders, customers, and the relentless social storm Jordan had sparked, the board approved a sweeping reform package, one nearly identical to the folder she had handed CEO Delaney in that tense executive meeting. Every employee, from ticket agents to top executives, would undergo anti-bias and racial sensitivity training. A third-party Civil Rights Accountability Council was formed, with Jordan as honorary chair. A confidential passenger discrimination hotline was launched and made public in every terminal. But the real shift came when other airlines started calling her. Delta, United, JetBlue, even international carriers. They didn't want to be the next PR disaster. They wanted Jordan's expertise, her clarity, her fearlessness. She started consulting, speaking, leading panels. What began as a humiliating moment at Gate 17 became the birth of a new initiative. Seat at the Table, a non-profit dedicated to fighting systemic discrimination in travel, hospitality, and executive leadership spaces. Within months, Jordan was invited to speak at Harvard Business School, South by Southwest, and even the United Nations Women's Forum. And as for the woman who tried to kick her out of first class, she never made the news again. But Jordan, she was just getting started. In one interview, a reporter asked her, "What made you speak up that day?" Jordan smiled and replied, "Because silence keeps people comfortable. And I didn't come this far to make anyone comfortable." That moment on the plane wasn't a disruption. It was a revolution in heels, 36,000 feet in the air. And thanks to Jordan Hayes, the next time a black woman walks into first class, she won't have to prove she belongs. She'll just sit down, like she always did. They tried to shrink her with doubt, tried to clip her wings before takeoff. But instead, she soared, turning a moment of disrespect into a national reckoning. Jordan Hayes didn't just demand a seat in first class, she redefined what it means to belong. And now, every time she boards a plane, the skies remember her name. Airplane, fire. Lightbulb, because when black excellence is challenged, it doesn't fold, it rises.